We are joined now by our friend Ryan Girdusky, savant extraordinaire when it comes to analyzing data. All right, Ryan, there's been a lot of fiery conversation. I'm sure you've seen it some on the social media apps. Uh, After I said that in order to win, Trump had to do better with college ed women in the suburbs, particularly focusing on the Philly area, Atlanta, Milwaukee, Phoenix, those big cities in those swing states with large suburban female populations, much of which is college educated. Right, wrong there. Where is this election going to be decided as we sit basically 9 months out based on the data as you have seen it?
So, in the most important swing states, everyone's going to make a lot of conversation about the Hispanic vote and the Asian vote, but most important states in this upcoming election, North Carolina, Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, you could throw in New Hampshire if you'd like, are 90% black white states. The only truly diverse one would maybe be Arizona and Nevada. So the vote will be if Trump manages to get 40% of the Hispanic vote, that would be great. And it will certainly help him in Texas and Arizona and Nevada. It will not really make that much of a difference in the most critical swing states. So I would like to preface with that. So the vote will then come down to a question of college-educated white voters, non-college educated white voters, and black voters. Trump needs to do one of the three to win. He needs to either A, make a reversal of college-educated voters, which he has been sliding with and continue to slide. In the New York Times Siena poll, the last one, Donald Trump does worse with college-educated white voters than any Republican since Barry Goldwater in 1964, which was not a good election for Republicans. He needs to turn out Republican non-college educated voters. This is the base of the Republican Party. This is a group that got him elected the first time in 2016, and they are the group that are about 1-5 Biden voters or 1 in 4 Biden voters, depending on the poll you look at, are non-college educated whites. So if Trump can take 5% of that voter group that is going to vote for Joe Biden into his coalition, that wins him the presidency, or the black vote. Now, a lot of people have said the polls show the black vote is going to be swinging more towards Trump than ever before. I am a doubter in that because it has never happened in our history. The most in 30 years we've seen their black vote is go 11% for George W. Bush in 2004. I don't believe it's going to have a huge swing. What's happening with the black vote, and this is key, older black voters are the most loyal Democrats there in the country. As they begin to die out, like all populations die out, younger black voters are replacing them, are less aligned with the Democratic Party. But they are still 85% Democrat. They're just not 95% Democrat. So either black turnout has to decline or the black vote has to splinter a little bit more than it could. But most importantly, it has to decline. The black vote declined from 2012 to 2016, and that's what got Trump elected in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. If the black vote declines, that would be more important than if a 1% or 2% move towards Donald Trump.
Ryan, it's Buck. Thanks for being here. The polls in the swing states have looked very, very strong for Trump, better than they've ever looked that I can think of in the past when you've had a election year like this. What do you attribute that to? And what, as somebody who wants to see a Republican winning in this next election, what worries you? Because I think right now there's a little bit of a quiet confidence, maybe even a quiet overconfidence in some corners of MAGA world.
Yeah, what is happening, I think, is Joe Biden. There is in 2012, famously, Obama's campaign said we need to frame the conversation around Mitt Romney early, so that no matter how much money Republicans spend, people's perception of him as an out of touch rich man will carry us through the election day, and it worked. I think the idea of Joe Biden being an incompetent old man who possibly has memory issues, who cannot complete a sentence in a timely manner, and who has dropped the ball on everything from the economy to foreign policy, which was a major first thing with the Afghanistan withdrawal and how botched it was, to the border. Even though the economy is improving according to most economic indicators, perception is I still can't buy a house because of the 7% interest rate, and Biden really doesn't know what he's doing. The economy improving is one of the biggest concerns. And also, what concerns me with the college-educated white vote, college-educated white voters have the highest voter turnout of any demographic group. Following that is black voters, and following that is non-college educated white voters. I am very afraid of non-college educated white voters not showing up, in the propensity, even though they're the largest demographic group in this country, some of the worst turnout rates possible. What I am afraid of is them being complacent and not showing up. I'm afraid that if the economy improves too much, that people will start changing their minds midway through the year, which is not impossible. And lastly, the thing that worries me the most is that for Republicans, for independent voters, right? Independent voters agree with Republicans more than Democrats on basically every single issue, from education to foreign policy to trade to taxes to immigration. The two issues they do not agree with Republicans are abortion and the 2020 election being stolen. It is a major, major, major fissure point. If your life is pretty good, there is not high crime, you're not seeing migrants in your town, and you have a good living, you have a good job, issues like that matter more to you, like college-educated white voters in the Philly suburbs, in the Phoenix suburbs, people who will be thinking about that. And my fear is that Trump will be running on the 2020 election, and in 2021, I think he sat there and said, "You can thank me for banning abortion." And I mean, that's why Joe Biden's first two ads have been 2020, January 6th, and abortion. That's all he's going to run on, because that will, he thinks, fissure the college-educated white voters who will show up because they always show up, and keep them Democrat.
Ryan, tell me if I'm crazy on this. When I'm looking at the polls and breaking things down in the Midwest, I think that Trump's going to come back and win Arizona and win Georgia. If I'm right on that, then Trump would just need to win mathematically one of the states in the upper Midwest, right? This is assuming Nevada's not in play, assuming New Hampshire's not in play. He'd have to win Pennsylvania, Michigan, or he'd have to win Wisconsin, right? That's the math, basically. Michigan, because of the large Jewish population and the large Arab population, there's a Detroit News poll out that had Trump up substantially. Do you buy into the idea of October 7th and the fallout of the discord between Hamas, Palestinians, Jews, that could really swing the state of Michigan, or am I reading too much into that?
Partially, but you have to remember, a lot of Muslims in this country are under the age of 18. Just like a lot of Amish in Pennsylvania. Most Amish in Pennsylvania are under the age of 18. Most Muslims in Michigan are under the age of 18. So though the Muslim population is large, those capable of voting is fairly small. Is it enough to swing the election? Possibly, but there's also 200,000 Muslims in the state of Georgia. So it just depends on how real this pushback of Muslims are, because they live far outside. I mean, everyone talking, but they are hundreds of thousands of them in Arizona and Georgia and these very, very close states that could well impact it. But the long-term reality is, if Joe Biden loses because the Muslim vote sits out in 2024 to punish him for his Israel thing, you can very well bet that there will never be, or probably not be, a Democratic president even remotely favorable to Israel anymore. This is the dividing line, the mass immigration. We've imported 3 million Muslims. There are way more Muslims than there are Jews now in this country. You can absolutely bet that the future of this country is going to have a very anti-Israel Democratic Party.
Do you think Jews as voting group, usually it's like 65-35, do you think Jewish people are likely to move at all in 2024 over this issue, or are you skeptical?
They're going to move because demographics have changed. The Woody Allen Jews, the older liberal, Barbra Streisand, non-religious Jews, they didn't have any children over the last 40 years. So their population is dwindling. The black hats, the Orthodox, the conservative Jews, the Ben Shapiro Jews, the Hasidim Jews, they are the ones having children. So the demographics are changing very quickly among this population, simply because Borough Park, Brooklyn, if you know what that is, it's a very Hasidic Jewish place, is growing, and the Upper West Side, which is like the more liberal place, is shrinking in the Jewish population. And that will change the Jewish profile of how Jewish voters cast their ballots in the future. It's just
Ryan, I just want to give you a minute here, because we get a lot of calls about this still. I know that you agree with me, so I love asking the question, that Michelle Obama is not going to be the Democrat nominee. But can you just explain why you think that is to everybody, because all the emails, all we get are calls, people saying Clay is right, and emails saying she's going to be the nominee. Why do you think it is? Look, no one can see the future. Maybe Clay is right. Maybe a lot of folks writing in are right. Why do you think it's very challenging for that to actually happen?
Okay, first, she does not like politics. She openly says she does not like politics. She has never given anything. The political world is very, very small as far as consultants go. You can especially for a presidential campaign, you know somebody who works for anybody in business. Nobody works for Michelle Obama as a professional consultant running for president. And she's ambition to. So repeatedly, she doesn't like Trump, which most black women in America don't like Donald Trump. That'd be the first thing. Second thing, Joe Biden has this nomination wrapped up. He would have to die or step down. If he does decide to step down, or if something happens to his health and he cannot serve, they're not going to bypass the first black sitting vice president, first black woman vice president, to have a woman whose only qualification is she married a former president. That's just not how Hillary Clinton had to be a senator and a secretary of state before getting the nomination for the Democratic Party. They just didn't give it to somebody because they were married. You don't call the plumber's wife if the plumber is out on another job. They don't know how to fix it. Like, it just doesn't work like that. And also,
I wish, Brian, can you come back for one? Do you have like 7 or 8 more minutes with us?
Clay is fired up. You've poked Clay now. Here we go.
Well, I want to talk about this.
Sure, I'll come back because Clay is just wrong on this.
That's why we got to have Ryan on.
I love succinctly, I'll come back as Clay is just wrong on this, which, by the way, is what my wife says on 98% of issues that we discuss in the house as well. All right, we'll bring Ryan back because I want to ask him about Michelle. I also want to dive into 2016 versus 2020 and what actually happened there for Trump, get a numbers analysis. But we're talking to Ryan Girdusky. He's wrong about Michelle Obama. Succinctly, by the way, Ryan, I think your hypothesis, the way you laid it out, I think Biden will say, I'm not going to run. I think that they will. You're right. It would be racist and sexist if Kamala Harris is not elevated. But I think Michelle Obama, far more liked in the party and more liked by black women. I think that they will, as a consensus candidate, end up nominating her. That's my theory on how it happens. But I wanted to go back to, we started off by asking.
Wait, you got to give Ryan a chance to speak to your theory.
Well, but I think he's already laid out why he thinks I'm wrong. I'm just telling him.
But they can't by gunpoint for the entire campaign. They're going to put a gun behind her and say, "Okay, Michelle, now run for." This is a woman who didn't.
No, I think she will want it, Ryan. It like psychologically. Okay, we disagree.
She did not. She did not stay awake for the 2016 election because she didn't care. She said she hated. She didn't want Obama to run for president. She doesn't like politics. She's never been a political person outside of speeches of the DNC. Like, she's said this over and over. I don't like politics.
If you give somebody only a 2-month campaign and tell them they'll be the greatest hero in the history of women in the country, maybe things would change. That's my theory. But
I had this about Oprah for how many years? Oprah was going to be the nominee. She was the secret thing. It was going to be Oprah. It was going to be Oprah. This is the new Oprah, Michelle Obama.
Maybe it'll be Oprah instead. So 2016. 2016, 2020. You talked about the way that Trump won in 2016. When you look at the data, and I understand people out there are like, it's rigged, but all we have is the data to go by. Why did Trump win in 2016 and then lose in 2020? When you look at the raw data, where was the election lost? What is the story there?
So Trump lost the college-educated white vote, but not by very much because they hated Hillary Clinton. He surged with the non-college-educated white vote, and the black vote as an overall population declined. Remember, there was a lot of backlash against Hillary Clinton over the crime bill that her husband had signed and that she was for, and then she'd called them, I forget the exact wordage, but she had called them
predators, I think was the, yeah.
Right. So all of that led to the black vote declining as an overall population. That drop led to states like Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin help flipping. Georgia remained a Republican +5 state. In 2020, Trump actually did fairly well among most demographic groups. He certainly improved substantially among Hispanics, especially among Cubans, Venezuelans, and Tejanos. the groups that he declined the most with were non-college educated white voters who had voted for Gary Johnson in 2016 and then went over to Joe Biden. Plus, also throughout that 4-year period, a number of silent generation voters who had voted Republican had passed away. A number of Generation Z had turned 18, voted Democrat. The demographics of the country are changing. They're not changing in a way that benefit Republicans. That's just how it is. I wrote a whole thing in my Substack, the National Populist Newsletter on Substack, about the changing demographics that are happening with the birth data as they stand just this year. So it's not in the benefit.
Ryan, we're at time, unfortunately, but you guys should all subscribe to Ryan's National Populist Newsletter. It is on Substack, so go check out that on the Substack platform. Ryan Girdusky, thanks for being with us, my friend. And
thank you,
everybody. We're going to talk about the Biden response to the East coming up in a little bit. And Ryan and I are going to have to figure out what kind of steak we're going to get for Clay if his Michelle Obama theory is right, because he's sticking to it.